Hi, everyone.
I was so unprepared. And here's the other best part. I went to Target today and I was like, oh, I want to show off my new fan I got. And literally with our, we have a little 30-second countdown so we know when it's going to start. I ran to my kitchen to grab it, took off the packaging and just threw it. And then it was I came on screen and I was like,
like a maniac, like a fiend. Go grab the fan if you want to go show
it's in my hands.
Okay, but just know I'm going to have to describe this for those that are on audio so you can get into the experience.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was going to open it the correct way. Yes, okay.
Here we go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hot Gay Moments. Oh, yeah.
Y'all, okay, so let me describe this. It's basically the super gay flag. So it's rainbow. It's got some of the trans colors on it, and it's also got the black and brown stripes. For the more progressive, it's beautiful. It's more inclusive. There you go, more inclusive fan.
Yes, I bought this at Target today. Had their Pride collection. It was a big deal. My friend and I bought out the entire Pride collection at Target, and
yes.
The cashier, because we also bought a whole bunch of the dog toys that are Pride themed, and she was just like, do you have a dog? And we're like, nope, our friend does. And she was like, there's a lot of dog toys here. And I said, yeah. And then I went, wait a minute, there's a lot of rainbow stuff there too. Are you gay, JR? And he was like, yeah. The cashier just laughed at awkwardly, okay.
She's like, wow, these fucking idiots.
All right, come on in. This is the agenda of the liberals. Anyway.
No, I love that. I've been seeing more and more Pride stuff come out, and I understand there's a bigger conversation about people making money off Pride and making money off of the struggles of LGBTQI plus people. But girl, if I don't love some of the designs that come out, because my little gay heart loves some of the stuff, even though I know it's got a capitalist backbone to it. I'm just ooh, but I want to buy it. And
what I like the most about the Target stuff is that every year a lot of this is in conjunction with other organizations and such that are LGBTQIA plus friendly, as well as a lot of some of the proceeds are going to go back. So if you're going to do it, companies out there and or any organization, if you're going to ever do something Pride themed, make sure at least a portion of whatever you're making goes back into the LGBTQ community in some capacity.
Absolutely.
That's all I'm going to say. But yeah, so I got that, and I got some gay masks, and I'm here for it.
Yes, we love a good gay mask. All right. Well, on gay masks, speaking of gay masks for masks, hi, I'm Dylan, a.k.a. Dylan. Beth hates that I did that.
It's just, just live your non-truth, because that's...
Yeah, live. Yeah, keep pretending that you're a mask, Dylan. Keep pretending.
Keep going. You know what? This is going to cue right into our imaginary friend episode. So go on.
It is. But my name's Dylan Zahner, a.k.a. Bit Dylan, and my co-host.
I'm Beth Dixon, also known as Augusta Wind 11. And we are Hot Mess Moments, discussing two of our favorite shows of all time, The Nanny, which is my favorite show. Dylan's favorite show is Lost, and we are watching each other's favorite show for the first time. Today we are going to be covering episode 7. Both of them.
We're already on to episode 7.
Damn.
I know.
That's a lot. And I think that last week The Nanny was the stronger episode. I think this week Lost is for sure the stronger episode.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
We'll get into why. I have some thoughts and feelings about this episode of The Nanny. But if you guys want to check us out or follow us on Twitter, make sure to follow us at Hot Mess Moments on Twitter. Make sure to hit that sub button if you're on YouTube, or if you're on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave us a nice little review. It helps us out tremendously. It's a free way to support the show. Tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell anyone that you know that's a fan of Lost or The Nanny, or maybe someone that it just loves being stupid, because we love those kind of people. That's our people. People that love to be stupid.
Our people are stupid people.
Exactly.
I love it.
So this episode of The Nanny is episode 7, Imaginary Friend. Not my favorite episode. And I hate to say this, I think it's because of Gracie. Like so my synopsis, or I'll give my rating, but Gracie really had a fall from grace for me. She really was like one of my favorites.
She had a fall from Gracie.
She had a fall from Gracie. So she was one of my favorite characters in the first episode or first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And I'm quickly realizing that Gracie's actress is a kid who cannot stay in character for very long. So she breaks character constantly. And because her character is so one note, it's very grating. So I think because this episode is another Gracie centric one, which is the second Gracie centric episode that we've had, this one was just kind of like, this is cute. I have some thoughts about the ending of it that I'll get into once we get to the ending section that I think you might not agree with me on.
Ooh,
but
you'll be surprised.
Okay. We'll have to see. But if I had to rate this episode, I'm going to give this episode a 5 out of 10. It's not like a terrible episode, but it's not one that I would ever want to come back to and rewatch.
This episode is one that is only notable because it's the first time there's like some physical comedy in it with, and that's literally like whenever people talk about like, oh, okay, the show, a lot of people, myself included, like to call this the I Love Lucy of the 90s, but we really haven't gotten like I Love Lucy had a lot of slapstick comedy, had a lot of like falling down or like funny faces and that kind of thing. And we start to see those funny faces come out of Fran. In this episode, we start to see some of the more slapstick physical comedy things, and it's still not there 100%. But the only reason why this episode is so notable in terms of like the entirety of the series is like, this is yet another exposition, not only for Gracie's character, but it's also like giving permission for the show to be a little sillier than it had been.
Yeah. And also a little bit more serious. I think like towards the end, there are some big revelations that we learn about the family and their history. And I think it'll be appropriate to talk about them once we get towards the end in our synopsis, because it does reshape my thoughts about the episode once we get to the ending. Because to be honest, I was not enjoying this episode for a good majority of it. It had funny moments, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But the flaws in Gracie's character are becoming more and more relevant the more I'm seeing Gracie's character. And I'm hoping that like in further seasons, we see her not just constantly be this like, haha, she's got mental illness, like slapstick humor. Because it's like, okay, this was like funny for one episode. Like, I want to see more. So we start off this episode with Gracie doing like group therapy with her stuffed animals. And Fran's look and hair here is gorgeous.
She looks so good.
Oh my
God. This episode has so many hits and flops when it comes to her fashion, because she has like a different outfit every scene, and like
it's so good.
The beginning was strong.
I don't know whoever did her hair in this episode, but they knocked it out of the park. She looked va-va-voom. She was gorgeous. I loved this like sweater moment that she had. That sweater looked comfortable. It was cute. But in this, we're learning about Imogen, who is Gracie's imaginary friend, who we're meant to later believe has been here the entire time. But I'm like, girl, we're like 7 episodes in, and this is the first time we're hearing about this. But anyway, so this is like this.
Well, I will say that Maxwell points out Imogen has been coming out a lot more recently. And like, I think a part of this is the idea that Imogen is almost like returned, having been subdued for a little bit. So that's just to contextualize that.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes complete sense. So then it gets into the actual episode, and Maggie is doing piano lessons, which Maggie always falls into this like B plot of most of these episodes, like for season 1. But this one is really funny because I'm just now thinking about it. If you are watching this on HBO Max, make sure to watch the after episode scene, because Maggie's face is like she's like really getting into the piano and she's making these like faces, like scrunching her face. And she's,
also,
like,
her
really
hands are popping up at times where they wouldn't if she was actually playing the piano.
It's like ridiculous. And I'm here for it. I'm here for like Maggie's piano mess because like Niles's humor during it is so good.
It's like they literally had to come up with something for Niles and Maggie, and we're just like, all right, we're going to have like a weird B plot where, and actually this is more like a D plot, like it has nothing to do with the episode. We're just going to have Maggie being really bad at piano and Niles making catty comments about it. Like that's literally what their two roles are. But as somebody who grew up in a musician household and is a musician myself, like it is so painfully true. Like I grew up playing piano. My brother played a little bit of piano, but then, you know, switched and he played violin and I played clarinet and my dad had drums and my mom sang. And like, we literally would be messing up all the time. And it's just like, how many times would you have to hear a child try to play something so out of tune on a violin? Like, oh, I can't play hot cross buns correctly. It's like, nope, nope. And you're like, oh my God. But that's literally like the household I grew up in. So I do have to say, I kind of like at least identify a little bit with the musician portion of it.
And when we get into our Lost, there's a connection between these episodes of music. Music plays a huge part in episode 7 of both these series. Well, I mean, it doesn't play that big of a part, but it's
the D plot for
the D plot.
the nanny.
Yeah. So we're learning about how Gracie is talking to her friend Imogen, who is this imaginary friend. And it's kind of fun to see the rest of the family kind of play along with this. They don't like Gracie is fully aware that this is not a real person. She is aware that this is an imaginary friend, but she's okay with it. And so the family is like, well, as long as you're okay with it, we're just going to ride with it and see where it goes. Because like Brighton doesn't really say too much about it. Maggie doesn't say too much about it, which is good for Gracie, because later, this is what was weird for me. So Fran goes to pick up Gracie from her therapist, and we're episode 7 into the series, and we've learned that several months have gone by. This is the first time she's picking up Gracie from the therapist.
Apparently. I don't know if this is normally like maybe their chauffeur picks up Gracie or whatever the case is. Because obviously a few episodes ago when Gracie just took a limo someplace, there's obviously some kind of relationship with a chauffeur that like whatever. So I don't know if this is, but I do agree. I've always thought that was weird. I would like to say a little fun side note about this particular scene. And I almost interrupted the viewing experience so that you could watch or like know this as you watched it. But the couple that Fran is talking to those are her actual parents in real life.
Shut up! Yeah, that is so funny.
Not the couple at the end who are fighting, but the first couple. The woman with like the red orange hair and the man with the dark hair. That's her actual.
That's so awesome.
And you will see them in various different extra roles throughout the entirety of the season. So it's kind of a fun little Easter egg. But Fran does such a good job of incorporating, like she had her dog in an episode, and she gets her parents, and she gets all these like different people from her life. Like her real life best friend plays her dumb best friend in this series. Like we haven't seen Val in a while, but like it's one of those things that I think is really fun.
It's really cool.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. I do want to pick apart one thing, and this is an issue I'm starting to see with The Nanny. And this is kind of, I'm hoping that like later seasons kind of iron it out, because I think it's because it's their first season. So there's been this like inconsistency of time that has passed. So I remarked about this, I think, in our 3rd episode, where I was kind of taken aback that like Fran had just kind of already kind of integrated herself into the house, and like months had passed since she started this job. And it was weird to like see this episode where it kind of felt like this was her first time like getting into things. And there's a lot of inconsistencies. I'll also talk about another inconsistency is I feel like the laugh track specifically in this episode is super obnoxious. Like it's not just like the standard, like, there's like people going like, woo, like in the background. And I normally I don't catch like the laugh track is just part of the sitcom, but
It's not actually a laugh track, and that's the best part.
It's live.
It's filmed in front of a live audience.
That makes sense because I had never really noticed it until now. There must have been really boisterous people like that episode because it
could have been because maybe she had family there if her parents were in the episode or something. You don't know. But I totally agree.
That makes sense. That makes sense though.
It's one of my least favorite things about like 90s, 80s sitcoms that were filmed in front of audience. I hate laugh tracks. Like I hate when people are trying to tell me when to laugh at something, although there is a science obviously behind like you're more likely to laugh at something if other people are. But I completely agree with you with the inconsistencies. It's something that I've always struggled with certain things with this series that I do believe gets better as it goes on. But
I figured,
And I also like, we don't know in particular, like this very well, like it's not that the episodes are out of order, but is this necessarily like sequential in the very beginning? Or just kind of like, these are like basically like little vignettes as to when these happened within her first few months or whatever. With like certain episodes marking time stamps. I don't know. I've literally never been able to figure it out, but I will say by the time you get to season 3, it's like pretty consistent from there.
Yeah, I feel like it's because it's their first season and they weren't sure if they weren't sure if they were going to get another season. So they're like, let's just throw out the best material that we got, and regardless of like a cohesive storyline between it. So I'm giving it, I give it a little bit of like, I'm not going to be as hard on it, but in this episode specifically, that moment where Fran shows up at the therapist and is like, oh, I've never been here before. I'm like, you've been her nanny for like months now. How is this the first time that you've like picked her up from therapy? But I was like, it's whatever. Suspension of, it's whatever. So she picks up Gracie, and there's this really, in 2020's lens or 2021's lens, a lot of like mental health jokes that are like thrown. And I'm not gonna. I'll talk about it for the majority of this episode, so that way we're not talking about it again because it happens multiple times. There is a bigger conversation now in 2021 about how mental health is very important. You should see a therapist. You should absolutely seek help if you feel like something is off with your well-being or with your mental health.
Or if you just want an impartial third party to talk to, because like whether it's therapy or counseling or whatever the case is, like I'm a true believer that literally everybody should have an impartial third party to go talk to about their lives. And like, and just have someone who's not going to for example, I'm very excited. I have a big move coming up in my career and all that kind of stuff. And all the people around me are so loving and supportive. But everybody has an opinion about something I should be doing or shouldn't be doing or those kind of things. And it adds so much stress on me. So it's just nice to be able to unload it onto somebody who's not going to give me like their opinion on what I should do unless I ask for it, in which case it's like a professional providing me help with how to make decisions or lessen my load. So I definitely agree. And I would also say in this particular episode, because of the narrative, it's a lot of Fran who is kind of shitting on therapy while the people who are richer aren't. And I think that's very class-based for the 90s in particular, where therapy was really only accessible and still remains to be mostly accessible to people who have money. And so therefore it's not crazy for people to like go see a therapist. Saying not crazy is kind of a weird choice of words on that one, Beth, but you know what I mean? Like it's not out of the ordinary for people to go see a therapist if they can afford it, because like, why wouldn't you? But it's definally lots of jokes here that some of them are really funny. But some of them are really like, I wouldn't put that in a 2021 show. Nowadays.
Yeah, and I'm watching this through the lens of like the 90s, so I can take the jabs, and it's funny. It's humor. It's meant to be humor, but it is just funny seeing it. Like, I don't think this takes away from the humor at all, because like back then, you know, the humor was much different. Things were very different. But in this moment, it is like, now that we've been through 2020 and like the mess that was 2020, you see this in a different
way. If you
way.
aren't seeing a therapist and you survive 2020, I'm like, girl, how are you doing?
Exactly.
I also want to point out, this is the only time in my life up to this point where I've sat back and been like, you know what? You better work Cece. You better tell her exactly. Therapy is very, you know.
Yeah.
I was like, I side with Cece on something.
Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah. So that moment, so Fran is like talking to Maxwell basically talking about why is Gracie seeing a therapist at 6 years old, which I kind of agree here. Like Gracie sees a therapist 2 times a week. Now, I don't know, like, I guess like towards the end of the episode, it kind of makes sense when we learn about what she's gone through, like why she would talk to a therapist. But he takes the approach of like, well, the therapist is going to solve the problem, so I don't have to worry about it. And that's not a healthy approach to take. And so Fran is trying to ground him. I'm like trying to defend Fran a little bit here. So Fran is like trying to ground him, being like, you can't rely on the therapist to solve this problem. You need to like take her out and see the world and like figure out what the problem is that she's having, because having an imaginary friend is like completely normal, and it shouldn't be something that is like frowned upon, because she doesn't know the context. The friend doesn't know the context of like everything that Gracie's gone through.
Right.
But in this scene specifically, there is a hilarious moment where she's like, so when they shot Bambi's mother to Cece, were you sad? And did
you find that a sad moment?
And they just sit on it. They just let it simmer.
At all.
Yeah, it's so good. And they let like, it makes more sense now that it's a live audience, now that I know, because the live audience is eating it up, girl. They are fucking it up.
And that's the one thing I will say. I don't know if you saw my cord. My cord went flying up in the air right now. Having a live audience, I will always advocate for over a laugh track, because there's an energy that the actors will feed off of. That's why going to a theater show is so like much fun and so special, because it's live in the moment, and there's an exchange of energy between the audience and the actors. So the same thing happens when you're like on a sound stage in a TV studio. But I totally agree. The Nanny has so many of these moments where like the audience just like builds it up for the actors. And that is an iconic scene. And I forgot it was in this episode. I was like, yes, I love this joke. Somebody was coming.
Yeah. And then I think my favorite punchline in that moment is she's like, well, now I'm going to talk to you. And she turns over to Maxwell. She's just like,
well, because Cece responds by saying, I'm sure she's mounted on some wall right now or whatever like that.
Yeah.
And, well, now I'm going to talk to you.
I don't know how they don't break character in the scene. It's so good.
So good. I can't wait. There are going to be episodes that have bloopers at the end. And like, I wished for this episode instead of the Maggie thing, even though it was ridiculous. Like it would have been so much fun to see bloopers. But anyway, yeah.
So I agree. So Fran goes to Maxwell, and then Cece says she's been going to therapy for 20 years. So it's like this like joke, like ooh, even Maxwell's like, what? Well,
the joke is that she goes, I've been going for 20 years, and then has a
it has like switch. An eye twitch. Yeah.
And you're like,
and then Maxwell's like, what the fuck? And this is where I noted that the cheering in the background was a bit obnoxious, but I think it's because like now that I know it's a live audience, they were eating it up. So Maxwell, so basically Fran and Gracie are making cookies in the kitchen, and they're having a conversation, and Fran is being very cognizant that Imogen is this like imaginary friend, is being cognizant of where Imogen is at all moments. And Maxwell comes in, and Fran accidentally kills Imogen. She like bites a cookie that Imogen is sitting on.
Because we learned that Imogen is like 3 inches big. Like she's super tiny.
So I feel like this scene was ad-libbed, because it's so funny, because you can see Gracie almost break character several times, because I feel like this isn't scripted. I feel like they were just like, pretend to resuscitate Imogen. And so Maxwell and Fran's energy here is so chaotic, and they're like yes-anding to each other. And it's so funny. They're trying to like one-up each other on how to do this. And again, horny for Maxwell, because him being a good father here, trying to save Imogen, I was just like, oh. And
my favorite moment from this scene is when he goes, first I'll clear her throat. And he goes like this. Yeah, and Gracie goes, that's not her throat. And he goes,
and then he cleans it.
Wipes he wipes his finger off. Then he turns the paper around and goes, okay, now I'm going to breathe it. This is her mouth, right?
It's so good.
The best part about, and then like Fran takes the pots and pan lids and goes clear, like, and that kind of stuff. But this is the kind of comedy this show starts to really settle into. So we have done a lot of the exposition. We kind of know who the characters are. I'm not going to say much about Grace moving forward, but I feel like what we've done is provided a good basis of how the jokes go on the show. But now we've added another layer, which is ridiculous comedy that might be ad-libbed, might not be. I don't think this scene was ad-libbed that much because of Gracie being so young.
That's
like
true.
They had to have certain moments where, you know, she had to say certain things. Like she at 6 years old is not going, that's not her mouth. I mean, maybe she is. I don't know. But anyway, so it's I think it's a really cute scene. For me, this is like the first time I really see this co-parent relationship just like absolutely in bloom this season. Or of this season. We've seen tidbits here and there. Yeah. This is the episode where it's like, oh, they're your co-parents. Definitely.
Yeah, and I will get into that later. We'll get there like here in a bit. Where I think this is very unhealthy. I want to talk about how unhealthy this relationship is. But so they try to comfort Gracie because Imogen is killed, and Fran is. They're like, so Gracie goes to her bedroom and they try to comfort Gracie, and Gracie's like kind of talking about like the dollhouse and how she doesn't know what to do with all the doll furniture because Imogen's no longer there. And so they give her some space because she wants to be alone. And Fran has this moment where she talks about her fish, and it's like the silly scene where he's like not showing sympathy at all for her. And she talks about how we should do a funeral for Imogen, which is a great idea to like put this to rest. But it adds like a darker connotation to it when you learn why Imogen's here, because it kind of feels like after you've watched the episode, you're like, this is kind of like her bearing her grief for her mom that died. And so there's a whole nother context to this like scene once you finish the episode. And
there's just so much there.
Yeah. And I'm going to get into now, because we could like talk. One thing I do want to point out is during this funeral, Fran's leather strap outfit, that was the outfit of the episode, comes back as her funeral outfit.
It's so good.
So good. But my outfit of the episode is actually Gracie's funeral outfit. Because
thank you.
So cute.
Okay.
So cute. It's a moment.
Literally didn't remember how fucking adorable that outfit was. And then she came down and I was like, I'm sorry. She definitely upstaged Fran for this. Like,
absolutely.
She's got the like little choker.
Oh, the choker.
Oh, bitch.
Yeah.
Crazy. I love
she turned it out. She really turned it out. I was like,
this is my Judy, my good friend, and I got to show the fuck up for her.
She really did. I was like, she could be in like a Conjuring film and I would believe it. Like she could be in a horror film. Like I could see it with that outfit. I was like, she's in a horror film.
Oh man, it's so good.
So I'm going to like, so we get to this, like the therapy appointment, and we obviously have to talk about this terrible veggie outfit. It's so ugly. So disgusting. Like, what are you doing, Fran? Like, they tried so hard to like.
It's my favorite thing is like, so we see the veggie outfit and there's a fruit outfit to come. That's exactly the same thing. But I always laugh because that is the fattest eggplant that's like on her boobs.
And now contextually, eggplants like are different in 2021.
Yeah,
so it's funnier now.
Like, yeah, she's got a thick dick on her.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like eggplant emoji work. Yes, I feel that. But we learn a few things in this therapy appointment that I think we need to talk about.
Yeah.
One, Maxwell's family has a history of mental illness, which they start talking about. But like, we can talk about like the comedy, but I really want to get into how unhealthy I feel like Fran's relationship is with this family. So we had talked about in previous episodes, I didn't know how long it had been since the children's mother had died. We're learning it's very fresh. It is like within, obviously, because it had to have been old enough to where Gracie had an imaginary friend, which you probably wouldn't have until you're like 4, maybe 3. like you'd start having an imaginary friend. So her mother must have passed like 3-4 years ago, which is super fresh for these kids. That is a fresh open wound.
But it also means Gracie was fully like 2-3 in that range.
Yeah, when her mother died. So it's for me a little unhealthy that Gracie has taken Fran into this mother role, and Fran is just okay with it. Like Fran is like completely okay co-parenting these children, and I still think this is like them heavily hinting that like Maxwell and Fran are going to get together, and like Fran will be the actual mother to these children at some point in the storyline of this. But sitting in this therapy appointment, I was like, am I the only one seeing red flags here? Because like the therapist is like, you've done such a great job with Gracie. And I'm like, you did a great job, but she just basically replaced her dead mother with Fran. Like, that's not healthy. Like, she is now codependent on her nanny, which is just as equally a problem. Like, it's like, let's ignore the real issue here, and we'll deal with that later in her life. Like,
and you know what? I just want to say, we're recording this the day before Mother's Day. So, you know, hey.
It's true.
If your mom passes away and Fran finds steps at your door, it's time to kill off your imaginary friend.
Yeah.
And replace her with a woman from Queens.
Yes. I do think though, like Fran's obviously like she's not like malicious at all in this. I just think that it's like, it's really fresh and funny that they're in an actual therapist's office, and therapist is like, this is super healthy. Like, you did a great job. You better work, girl. And I'm like, that's cool, but like,
I'm not as mad about the idea of replacing the mother, because that's very much the idea of a nanny for a single parent. It's not to replace a parent, but to provide the nurturing and care that you would normally expect from two parents. And I believe, we don't know this at this point or not, but and I'm actually not sure if it ever comes out, but we don't know if they had a nanny when the mother was alive, because lots of families do that where they have both parents, but they also have a nanny, and the nanny's in charge of the children. So it's like there's almost like 3 parents involved in that. So we don't know if they've always had a nanny, or if the nanny came around because Maxwell couldn't handle the children by himself. My assumption, based off of what we've heard already, is that the nanny came about after the mother died. But anyway, I'm not as mad about that as much as I am just little physical cues of, to your point, with Fran and Maxwell's relationship. They are so close to each other physically.
He's got his arm around her.
He's got his arm around her.
Yeah.
They're sitting on that tiny little bench in her room together. Like, there's little things like that if you are a 6-year-old grieving the loss of your mother, like, you are replacing her because you were seeing 2 parents there, not your father and your nanny. So I definitely agree with you on the, like, there's some issues here, but I think it's more because of Fran and Max, and not because
that makes sense,
of Fran by herself.
No, that makes complete sense, because I also wrote that down. I was just like, wow, he is real comfortable around Fran. He's got his arm around both Gracie and Fran, and they're just like, the energy between the two of them comes across as like very parental. Like, they're both very parental when they're in the same room with the kids. The last thing I do want to talk about, though, is the shade that Fran is throwing at this therapist is so funny. And
it's so good.
She's like, oh yeah, her wardrobe has gotten so much better. And then
and Fran just looks her up and down and goes, we'll talk.
It's so shady. I was like, that therapist didn't deserve this.
And the other good line was when she said something about like therapy not being necessary or something, or like, oh wow, I guess it is like therapy is worth it or something like that. And the therapist goes, well, thank you, Miss Fine. Yeah. Thanks. Right in front of my salad.
So overall, for me, this episode, not my favorite. I would rate this as probably the second worst episode that we've seen so far. And I think it's because of Gracie specifically. I hate to break it to you, Gracie, but her and it's not her, it's like her writing, and I'll add a little bit of the acting too. Yeah. She breaks character a lot. but
yeah.
Probably
I will say this is
second worst episode.
I don't think we see a Gracie centric episode for a long time. I feel like there's just, I feel like we're still, you know, we're 7 episodes in. I think it's like 24 episodes or 22 episodes in the first season altogether. So we're still kind of like climbing the little, like, how are we defining the characters, or like, how are they changing within the first few episodes to set up for other things? So, but yeah, I definitely agree. I also was not the biggest fan of this episode. It only holds a special place in my heart because the resuscitation scene, and that's literally it. Like, I really don't care about anything else in this episode. One thing I do want to ask you about, because we were talking about the inappropriateness of Maxwell and Fran's relationship, but I also like want to refer back to a conversation we had a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
I was specifically thinking about this episode. You had said.
Yeah.
Something, I feel like it was literally like in the second episode or the third episode, you said something along the lines of like, I don't think that there's like or something about like there not being an appropriate workplace kind of thing.
Like they're not being like, I think I had said something along the lines of it had been inappropriate. I was just like, it was like super inappropriate.
Can you think of any other examples other than what we've already talked about that you think would be like, probably not worth it in like a normal office situation of like Fran walking in on an office and doing something?
From this specific episode or from here? Just
generally, but like
there's a ton. There's a shit ton. There's like his having his arm around her, him like coming to her actual like house. I believe he had done that at one point, and it was just like
in the first episode when he asked her back.
No, I can't remember. Maybe no, I'm sorry. He went to go pick up Grace in that episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He like always is standing like super close to her. He's like,
and it's not just him either.
It's not. It's everyone. Like this entire family's like this.
No, what I was gonna say is like, we always, and I'm not, this is not me coming for women or anything like that, but we always go to like, okay, the guy's the one in the wrong here.
Totally doing it too.
The one thing I always think about is the fact that like she always goes into his office and sits on his desk, like with like her legs crossed with a mini skirt on and all that kind of stuff. And like, imagine being in a workplace and like, you walked into your boss's office and just like sat in the corner of the desk and like did that kind of thing. Like, like it's just so like or like imagine if Cece did that with Maxwell.
It'd be weird.
Like it looks, but because it's Fran, we're like, oh my God, that's great. And we don't even really think about it. But like the more I think about it, like when you were bringing up like, oh, something's like really inappropriate here. And then I also made the comment, I was like, listen, like nobody in this house has boundaries. Like they're awful in terms of like, there would be so many HR violations, but it just made me think about like the fact, but like, we just kind of give it a pass because it's like so funny and it adds things here. But this is like, I watched the episode today and like, she's literally on his desk and her legs are like rubbing against each other. And I was just like, how does he not pop a boner right now?
Oh my God. Yeah. I was like, Maxwell. Ooh, I'd watch the video. Yeah, not my favorite. If I had to give my MVP to anyone, I would probably give the MVP to. I might give it to Maxwell because I feel like
I would give it to him.
I think he did a really good job of like catering to Gracie's needs, and then like that resuscitation scene is just so good. Like, oh my God, it's so good. The LVP I'm going to give to Gracie because of the acting in this episode. It's just not good. But yeah, that was Imaginary Friend from The Nanny.
Hey, yay. Good times. Okay.
So,
speaking of other musicians,
right?
Previously on Lost.
Yeah, previously on Lost.
Lovely.
Yeah. We are in episode 7 of Lost called The Moth, which I think is the first time where like the title of an episode shows up a lot. Like,
yes,
the episode title
there was
is
actually
like,
a lot of moths.
There was a lot of moths.
I have to tell you, my cousin Katie is so deathly afraid of butterflies and moths.
Like, really?
Yes, she once lived in Brooklyn and called my other cousin her brother. She was like, "I have a bat in my apartment. I need you to come over and help me." And so he went over, and she was like, "Okay, it's not a bath, it's a moth, but I need you to get it out of my apartment."
What?
She's like absolutely has some kind of phobia. But she and her husband on their honeymoon went down, I think it was in Aruba, but they went to, one of the Southern Caribbean islands, or a few of them, and they were in someplace and they had this huge black moth. Like, I'm talking like wingspan, like a foot long, and it was on their door at night. And she cried and ran to the front desk, and like they were like, I need you, can you kill it? They're like, no, these are like sacred, like these are like they mean good luck. Like, this is amazing. It landed on your honeymoon. This is like, you are going to have such amazing luck in your life. And she's like, kill it,
Burn it with fire.
But I always laugh about moths and such. Whenever I think about moths, I think about my cousin Katie. Love you, girl.
Shout out to Katie.
Hey,
don't watch Mothra ever.
Yeah, don't do that. But this episode is a Charlie centered episode, and it actually, I think, advances the plot quite a bit.
It does a bit. I will let you know, it is the start of like the second arc of season 1.
I could tell specifically with the Saeed timeline of things.
Yep.
Which we will get into, because thoughts, theories, and emotions. But I do want to talk mostly about Charlie and Jack's kind of journey with this episode. So in particular, and Locke. So in this episode, we start to see Charlie is withdrawing because, as we know in the last episode, he gave up his drugs to Locke in order to get his guitar.
Yep.
And so Locke is very much acting as a parental figure. And we've seen this now that he's done this with Jack. He's now doing it with, this is Locke. I mean, it has acted like a father figure with Jack. Like, literally, Jack was chasing his father through the jungle, and Locke's the one that saves him. Yep. Here, Locke knows what's up with Charlie and is trying to, like, come on, let's go for a walk. Let's do these things. And they go for a walk, and Charlie ends up getting chased by a boar. Which again, and he runs right into a path that Locke had set up for a trap for the boar. The boar gets, I feel like there's some kind of symbolism with Locke and the boar the entire episode, because it's like the very beginning, it's like the boar got trapped. And so maybe that's Charlie. Charlie got trapped by Locke with the drugs and that kind of thing. And then throughout the episode, you see Locke is like skinning the boar, which is like he's stripping the boar down, which is very similar to Charlie. He's giving Charlie, he gives Charlie the choice. He says, I'm going to tell you, you can ask me for your drugs back 3 times. You've already asked me once. So you get 2 more times. If you ask me at the end of the 3rd time, I will give you your drugs back. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want you to make the choice that you want the drugs or you don't want the drugs.
Yep.
Because if I were just to throw them away, you didn't make the choice, and therefore you're more likely to not be able to grow from this and really take control, which I think is just such a wonderful lesson just for everybody. Totally. Like Locke, literally, I was like, you better fucking work with this. You better work. It's great.
It's like, it's such a huge theme, not just in this episode, but overall, where it's like struggle is what gives you growth. And that's like one of my favorite things about Lost is the character development, because like it shows it time and time again. And I'm not going to like spoil anything, but
no, of course
like,
not.
Like that is instrumental to the show, is like you go through all these trials and tribulations to become a better person, hopefully by the end of it. And but it also symbolism of like, and it's
also about your the choices you make, right? So it's about choice and like, but sticking with it and having discipline and taking control and those kind of things, right? So what we see are these flashbacks where Charlie used to be religious, but also was in this band. And so like the first flashback, you see him in confession, which is actually kind of funny because he's like, I had relations with this girl, and then I had relations with another girl, and then I watched as the 2 girls had relations. Like, really funny. But basically he makes the decision that like, this is not the life for me. I want to quit the band. His older brother is in the band, and we learned that Charlie is really the songwriter and his brother is more the performer.
Yep.
And so they're about to have their big break. They're about to get signed. And Charlie's like, I don't want to do this. It's not good for my life. And his brother goes, come on. Like, I promise the moment that you feel like if something's out of control, like we will quit. And of course, we start to see his brother have an ego and step over Charlie. His brother's the one that is seen as the band. He's getting all of these girls. You see him start doing heroin. And when Charlie tries to say, no, we can't do this, like we need to leave the band, his brother like freaks out on him. And you see Charlie look at the drugs, and then it's clear that Charlie decides, well, if I can't beat him, I might as well join him, kind of thing. And so he makes the choice there of, I'm not gonna be able to leave, so I might as well join in, kind of thing. And then we do see a separate cut where another flashback. I'm just gonna do the flashbacks first because I think
it makes sense for this episode.
So we do see that right before the Charlie was coming back, the reason why he was on the flight from Australia was because he had gone to Australia, was in Sydney, where he saw his brother, who now is a father, very clean cut, and has gotten clean himself, and has said to Charlie, like, listen, I'm going to help you get clean if you want. And he's like, because Charlie's trying to get him to join the band again because they might have like a second redemption kind of thing. And he's like, you did this to me. You're the reason why I am this way. And you promised me that we'd get out when we wanted. And now you were telling me that we can't get in the band when you're doing the exact opposite that I tried to do. Like basically like kind of blaming his brother there for everything. And so he storms out on his brother. And so he's in Sydney, and you assume that when he's on the flight, he's trying to go back to America to try to get a contract signed again. So that's kind of the background of where Charlie's at. There's a lot here where Charlie, in between these scenes, you know, he's tweaking, he's having freakouts, he has a moment with Jack where he kind of yells at Jack when they're in the cave collapses on Jack, but Charlie makes it out. There's a lot of symbolism with these, which is that Charlie has never, it's not that Charlie hasn't been given the choice, but he's never had the agency in his life. He's always been a pawn for other people. It has never demanded control for himself. And I actually wrote at the very end, because I thought it was being freaking poetic. I said, Charlie has never had someone looking out for him, but he always has put the responsibility on others to do that. So he never takes responsibility for himself. And this episode shows him taking control and making those decisions and showing his worth, and that he's not just like some side character kind of situation. Like he can be the main character kind of thing in his own life and on the island. So, basically what happens is Jack gets trapped in this cave. They try to hollow out an area, but they're afraid. Michael, who apparently knows shit about like construction.
I want to talk about this because this is the first time Michael's actually useful. Like,
bitch,
he pulls out this construction knowledge.
How come you were doing that kind of shit with the airplane pieces and trying to construct something that was nice out on the beach? You might not have to even be in the freaking caves if you'd done your damn job out there. What the hell, buddy? Also, he went from being a ditzy, like blah, 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 to like just, this was another whiplash moment. I was like, okay. Two characters proving their worth who were worthless in one episode.
But I think that there is a reason why there's this whiplash in Michael's character, because there's that scene in the caves where he looks at Sun, and it's like really weird because you're like, is he like into Sun? Like, what's going on here?
So but I think presenting for her.
No, I think it's because he knew now. Beth's just giving us sex right now.
If that sex, nobody wants any.
Could you imagine if Michael just started like rubbing his nipples and looking at Sun, and Sun's just like, ooh. No, I don't want to see it. No, don't lick the fan. So I
have to get at least one hot mess moment in.
Of course. And I think the reason why Michael does this is because what we saw in the last episode was that Sun was like, I need you to fucking step up and to give this watch back to Jin. And it lit a fire under Michael's ass to like do shit, because like even the way he talks to Walt is more fatherly. He's just like, get away from here. I don't want you to get injured. Go stand over there. Like he is much more demanding to his son than he has been from the start. And I think this lit a fire under his ass. Like you need to start being a good father to your son. And like you need to start like being helpful.
Like you have been helpful in trying to contribute, but you haven't had the confidence or whatever that fire is like inside of him. And clearly this is something that he knows a lot about. So like in the same way that like Jack took control and like was helping people with their health and making decisions, like Michael's like, this is how I take control, like this, whatever.
Yeah.
So basically it comes down to there's a hole that's just big enough for someone who is smaller to be able to crawl through, and people are trying to volunteer left and right. And Charlie takes this opportunity after having his conversation with Locke where they talk about struggle, and that struggle is important for growth. And that's where he looks at the cocoon and talks about moths and how that moths are stronger than butterflies, and butterflies get all the praise, but a moth has a stronger cocoon that they have to fight through. And he goes, and I could make it easier by making a little hole for it, but it wouldn't strengthen itself through the struggle. And all I could think about was Pokemon a little bit. How Metapod literally only has the move struggle if you catch it as a Metapod.
And so like clearly like Pokemon or Lost was inspired by Pokemon, obviously.
Yeah.
Not nature,
anyway,
but Pokemon.
But I just like that it's struggle and goes, like all I can think about is like in the video games where it's just like,
yeah, Metapod's like, yeah, he makes that exact noise.
And it doesn't do anything. That's my favorite part. It's like it doesn't hurt Metapod or anything else. It's just like,
yeah, it just struggles.
Metapod, use struggle. Oh, I guess they can also use harden.
That's true.
Actually, you know what? The Pokemon people are going to come for me. Listen.
They are. You're going to get canceled.
Struggle happens when you run out of harden. That's what happens. He can't do anything else, so it struggles. But anyway, it's more likely to happen with Metapod because it only has such a
you're a mess.
Cancel me, Mom. Anyway.
No, I think like what you're saying here though is accurate, because that cocoon obviously is a symbolization for like Charlie's journey in this episode, where he's like, you're currently in a cocoon, you're fighting your drug addiction here on this island. Some keynotes in Charlie's journey that I do want us to talk about is, first and foremost, what are your thoughts on the fact that Jack seems very privy to know that Charlie is going through withdrawal. And I felt it was weird this is like my third time watching this episode. I found it weird that Jack only brings this up when they're in the cave-in. Like clearly Jack knows he's going through withdrawal symptoms.
I didn't think that Jack knew until they were in the cave. I think I thought he figured it out then.
He might have,
I mean, close proximity, really, that's the only thing you can really focus on in that moment after you got the rock.
Charlie's like got crazy eyes and he's got like dirt all over him.
And he's just like, So eventually Charlie gets down and finds where Jack is. Jack has a boulder on him. So Charlie removes it from his leg. And then you find out
this moment. Oh,
by the way, I wish we could have recorded our reactions to this moment, but it reminded me of Stephanie LaGrossa from Heroes versus Villains and Survivor. But basically, Jack has his shoulder dislocated, and he makes Charlie grab it and just pull as hard as you can. You hear like and it just puts back into place, and obviously that's gonna be painful. And the entire time, Dylan and I were like, no, don't show us.
We're like,
and we know what's going to happen. As if we didn't see like a flayed human in the first episode, like, which is like way more graphic and worse. And we're just sitting here like, a dislocated shoulder. Please don't give this to us. Like, whatever. But yeah. So basically, Charlie... Charlie helps save them, and there's another shift when Charlie was getting in the cave, which means now they're both kind of stuck in there. And they eventually, Charlie notices a moth, blah, 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 and the moth, he's like, well, I had to have gotten down here somewhere, which, like, by the way, Charlie, that moth could have been there when the thing caved in, but
it totally was, because like he breaks through dirt. I'm like, the moth didn't dig its way in here. Like, it had to have been here to begin with.
I mean, and maybe it did. I don't know about moths. I don't know about moths and their truth, but basically he finds that there's like what would have been more believable in this moment is if the moth had been standing still or something and you saw a breeze on the wings or something like that showed like there was a little bit of air coming from someplace. Just putting it out there, writers of Lost. I know this has been like 15 years, but like if you want a little bit of help, just call me up. But
hit her up.
Hey, what's up? So he finds, oh my gosh, there's an area here that we can kind of break through the dirt, which is exactly what moths do with their cocoon. Symbolism coming right through in your face. And so, so he breaks out and he saves. My favorite is Walt just going, hey, it's the doctor guy.
yeah. Hey, it's the doctor guy. And then he just like shows up, not even dirty. They're like, also, they showed up and they were like not as dirty, I felt like, that they should have been.
You know why? Because they were rebirthed through the ground.
There you go. It's symbolism, darling.
Symbolism. There we are. So that I just wrote, good boy, Charlie. I don't know what that was about. I know what that's about. At the very end, Charlie goes to Locke.
Oh, yeah.
And asks for his drugs for the third time. And Locke gives him the drugs and he throws it into the fire. So therefore, he's made the choice that I'm going to ask you for the drugs because I don't want you to dispose of it. I want to dispose of it. This is like, I'm getting rid of this. This is my choice. And then you see him withdrawing and Jack and Locke are pretty attentive to him and he's going to be fine. And Jack's covering for him, saying that he's got the flu. And I think it's Hurley who's like, wow, man, that's like really sucks that like you went through all that and you have the flu. Like when, like meanwhile, my fucking selfish ass would be like, ew, you have the flu, get away. Like,
yeah, it's like, ew, gross.
I'm on an island.
How did you get the flu on an island with like, if no one else had the flu?
You know what? That's the airplane circulation. You know, that just, you know, because apparently this is only what, like 8 days, 9 days into this whole
something
situation.
like that. Yeah, it's like 7 or 8 days.
So that's basically the Charlie storyline.
Yeah, there are a few like small elements I do want to talk about.
Yes, please.
So first off, because we had already talked about Michael, I love that Michael calls out Hurley for the microaggressions that he's been doing to Sun and Jin. Like you called it out in the last few episodes about Hurley, and Michael stands up to it and is like, "They're Korean, dude. Like, call them Korean."
But here's my problem. Allies. Don't wait until it's a problem. Say it the first time.
Agreed. But
when you're noticing it, but you realize that the reason why Michael says it now is because now he has some kind of relationship with like Sun and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, whatever.
Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. So another thing that I do want to talk about is how funny it was, because recently I got into a conversation talking about The Descent, and the scene where they're like crawling through the tunnel reminded me of The Descent so much. If you've never seen The Descent, it's really creepy.
Was that with Paris Hilton?
No, that's House of Wax. You're thinking of House of Wax. The Descent is like an all-female cast movie about a bunch of women that go into like these tunnels. I love that you just like Is that the one with Paris Hilton? Yes, it is.
Well, I'm not like a connoisseur of horror or suspense movies, and I just remember around the same time The Descent came out, House of Wax came out, like they were somewhere within the same year. And I like all I have is images that are like similar in color in my head just from the trailer, and just the idea that Paris Hilton was in a horror movie is so funny to me.
So.
Also, please tell me, did you ever watch House of Wax?
I did. It's terrible.
Please tell me, does she say that's hot when there's wax at some point? Because that would be great.
I don't think she does. She dies very early into the film.
Writers of
House of Wax.
House of Wax. I know this is about 17 years too late, but if you need some help, I can help.
So, one thing that I also want to talk about in this specific moment is I think it is very important to showcase the fact that like Charlie was a very religious person at the beginning of his life, and you see that through his like confession that he's going through in the church. And I think like he still has elements of that to his character, because like when they all crash, he has these like tape like around his fingers, and he writes fate like on it, and he's like very like,
it says fate.
It didn't originally say fate. It said something else, and then
I thought it said late.
It did say late, and then he changes it, I think, in episode 3 to say fate.
This whole time, I never noticed he changed it to fate.
Yeah.
I never knew why it said late, and I was like,
it might not. I might have just completely made that up, but I could
no,
have swore
that makes so much more sense. Yeah. But continue your thought, because I have thought about this too.
Okay. So, the obviously the lesson of this episode is like choice. Choice is like a big factor, and I love that you picked up on the symbolism of the boar, because I didn't even catch that on my third viewing until you pointed that out. I was like, oh my God, you're completely right. Like the boar, it's caught in a trap. Also, Locke, what the fuck? You are that genius that you made this trap out of like suitcases and like clothing or whatever the hell that was. Genius.
I'm telling you, the island is speaking to him. I feel like this is like where he's supposed to be.
For real. Fate. Yeah. I also, in terms of like Charlie's growth in this, with him like escaping with Jack, I think like what we're starting to see from Charlie is that he is taking the onus upon himself to like make the choices that he needs, and he is taking the onus to make sure that despite them being on this island and the current path in his life, that he can't go back to Drive Shaft, obviously, until they get off this island. He is going to make the best out of the shitty situation that he's found himself in, which is really important, because that's kind of the overall message that we're trying to get with them moving into the caves, is like, we need to settle down and like fucking figure this out. Like, rescue's not coming.
I also want to point out, I think there's a bigger message outside of just Lost here that I think the writers are trying to put a little jab at, which is the idea of religion and how you play a role in your choices with religion. So there's a lot of people out there, myself included. If you don't agree with me on this, this is completely fine. I'm just pointing out there that this is where I think they might have been going. Doesn't mean they're right. But there's a lot of people out there who don't take onus over their lives or their choices or their accomplishments and their problems. And it's just, well, God will take care of it. God, if God wants me to get this job, I'll get this job. And it like absolves them of responsibility, and it absolves people of this idea that you don't have control because ultimately God does. But my whole thought has always been, I grew up Christian. I consider myself a Christian agnostic, in the sense that I'm agnostic through a Christian lens, because that's what I'm familiar with. I'm a firm believer that if there is a God, they created us in order to make our own lives and give us autonomy and on all those different kinds of things. And that we shouldn't be reliant that there's something bigger that's just going to make everything work out for us. Like, it's up to us to create and do things in our lives here and make our accomplishments and those kinds of things, which also means taking responsibility for when you fuck up. It means that you grow, you learn, you struggle, you do all these kind of things, and just not put the onus on somebody else. And I feel like Charlie's relationship with religion in this episode is really interesting, where he's like, I'm fucking up, but I'll just say I'm sorry to God and I'll leave and God will be happy with me. And it's like, that's great, but you need to leave for you, not for God. And like, that's the problem I personally have. Again, I'm not, if you believe very separately from me,
dumping on
you're canceled. No, I was kidding. Yes. If you believe differently from me, that's absolutely your thing. But I saw a lot of how I believe and how the writers chose to incorporate some of that in there, which I thought was really interesting, especially at a time in the mid 2000s where we saw a huge swing of people going back to church after the 9/11 attacks, where people were trying to make sense of all these different issues and all these different wars that we had, the economy, the social social issues that were starting to really happen. Like there's a lot of people who really like returned back to the church in the early 2000s. And so I just think that this is like an interesting little thing that maybe the writers were putting there. Maybe they aren't. And I'm just looking at something that's not there, but at least I connected in that way. I just wanted to point that out.
No, I think it's that's the beauty of Lost, is it's always open to like your own personal experiences and interpretation. It lends itself to that fully. Like
Totally.
That is the one of the defining features of the show is the forums that started after every episode, people theorizing like crazy, like, this theme and this connection to this, and oh my god, I saw this is what this element meant. That was
Cut
like
to
one
me
of the
in 2015, like after Game of Thrones went past the books, of me theorizing like crazy, like what's gonna happen, what's the symbolism here, does it tie back to book 3, like
that like makes the show even better, and that's why I like doing this, because it kind of fills that role for us where you're watching this for the first time and we can get to talk about it.
Totally.
So since we're still talking about it, I want to flip over to the other storyline within this episode, which is Sayid wants to triangulate this to figure out. Beth's got theories. Okay, so Sayid wants to triangulate where this signal is coming from, because he's like, it has to be coming from somewhere on the island. There has to be some sort of technology that is like allowing the signal to continue to broadcast for this amount of time. So he kind of fixes these the radio transceiver, and then he uses like a laptop battery and other things, which we'll talk about later how he gets that laptop battery. But he uses these different technological elements to create something to triangulate. And there is a scene where Sayid, Kate, and Boone are in their white shirts on a beach. There's the white and black theme once again. And they're talking about how they need to like go to different sections of the island and use these bottle rockets, which are where I'm like, who the hell brought bottle rockets like on a plane? Like, how did that happen? But they have bottle rockets somehow.
Which, especially post 9/11, when they cracked down like crazy at airport security all over the world.
Exactly. But I'll suspend
my
reality here.
There's a fucking invisible monster thing. So I guess I'll give the
the bottle rockets.
A pass.
So they have to go to like specific.
There's a polar bear on this island, bitch.
It's true.
Jack chased his dead dad who's not in his coffin. I will give the bottle rockets a fucking pass.
That's true. So they have to go to different sections of the island in order to turn on the signals at the same time, because the batteries are really low on these signals, and he needs to figure out where this is. So they're going to tell each other when to turn them on via the bottle rockets. What are your thoughts on this plan of theirs, this plan of attack to like triangulate the signal?
So, okay. That's a crack team you've got going on there. You got 3 people who want to make a difference, who want to help, who are involved. Wonderful. When the cave-in happens, Sawyer is sent to go get Kate and tell her about it, but Kate is being honestly kind of nasty to him, but she kind of deserves it at the same time.
Agreed.
There's a lot of tension there that I see a love triangle happening in the future. I'm just putting it out there. I don't know how much of that is like, I don't think it's happening now, putting that out there, but I see Sawyer. I think Sawyer is going to develop feelings for Kate if he hasn't started to already. But anyway, Sawyer goes along with them for a while and then drops at a moment when Sayid has moved on. Oh yeah, by the way, like he kind of slips into the conversation of like, too bad if Jack had only held on a few more days, you could have told him that or whatever. And this is where he basically tells Kate, Jack's in a cave-in and presumed dead. So Kate takes off running after telling Sawyer multiple times what to do. And all I can think of is like, Sawyer is that bitch and would just like fuck it up on purpose. And I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
Then when Jack is caved in, Boone is like, forget this mission. I'm gonna Shannon, you can do this, right? And I'm like, no, don't you dare go to Shannon, the most unreliable, pretentious fucking bitch who can't do anything for herself, can't catch a fish for herself. What she's gonna do is tell someone the wrong information so they do it for her. That's gonna get fucked up. I was like, no, you bitches. So my idea about the plan is like, if it works and they're able to get a signal, then they know that it's somewhere within that triangle. If they don't get a signal, it's outside the triangle. So that helps them to really figure out where's the power source. Also, is there another woman on the island? Like, what is happening here? Like, everyone is presuming this French girl is dead. I'm not. I'm still like, I really think that eventually they're gonna like come across like this woman, and she's like gonna be like an older woman who's like coffined by the elements of the island or something.
Okay.
So it happens. It's 5 o'clock. Saeed sets his little bottle rocket off. Maggie's talking about LA with some bitch on the beach. And the girl's like, what's that? And I was just like, first of all, why don't we tell the whole fucking, oh wait, they can't do that. Never mind. Because people don't know about the signal.
Yeah.
And Maggie's, or not Mag, if I ever say Maggie, it's just because it's the.
I know. Yeah.
Shannon's like, oh shit, I gotta, so she goes over and she lights her rocket thing on and goes up. And then I'm sitting there going, you fucking idiot, Sawyer, if you don't fucking put that rocket.
You were so mad. I could see your face when you were watching the episode.
I was like, Shannon, you dumb bitch. You fucking did that. Well, and then I was like, okay, you did one half. You got to turn on the other thing. You got to turn it on when the third one goes on. Don't you fucking forget, Shannon. And then we go back to Saeed, and we do see the third bottle rocket go up. And I was like, okay, Sawyer's doing the damn thing. He knows it's best for him. Like, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. He's probably also thinking, if we find other people, I've got more clientele for me to like, work with, like, whatever.
Yeah.
So whatever. So the third thing goes off. All of them apparently turn on their thing because Saeed does get a signal. And just when he's about to figure out what the symbol is, some bitch comes out of nowhere and hits him across the head with what looked like a 2x4, but I'm sure it was just a branch.
Yeah, it was just a branch, yeah.
Actually, not I thought it was an oar at first, and then I realized that it was. I think it was just a branch. Yeah.
Theories.
I think it's the French bitch.
Okay. I
think it's her, and I don't know. Like, 'cause, like, my whole point is like, first of all, it couldn't be anybody who's in their group, because I don't think the people in the caves even know that people are missing right now. Or not missing, but have left. The people on the beach, like, why would anybody want to stop something that clearly some of the leaders are passionate about and trying to do something, even if they don't know what it is? So it has to be an outside character. The other thought I had was, what if it's Jack's dad?
Ooh, okay.
And he doesn't want to be found because he's dead? Or like they don't want to get help because he's dead, and like this is the only place where like maybe he can be alive. I don't know. There's so many things, but I don't know. Saeed is knocked out. I would have to assume that they actually don't get a sense of like the plan has to have failed, because I'm sure by the time he comes to, if he's still in the same place, the signal's got to be dead at that point because there's like no battery in them.
Yeah. It's a lot. Yeah, it's an intense episode. There are a few things that I do want to point out.
With this.
Yeah, go for it.
My favorite note I wrote after that.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, this is a quote that Dylan and I love all the time. I wrote, now who the fuck did that?
Yeah. That's right. For those that don't know, it's from Scary Movie 3.
Yeah, it's our favorite episode. Now who the fuck did that? I wrote.
Yeah. Now who the fuck did that?
To Saeed.
So there's
also,
a few.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Looking at this note underneath, Kate says to Jack, so these are these caves you keep going on about that are safe. Kate, you've seen the damn caves before. This is not the first time.
So I have a theory. That I feel like I feel like the writers knew the last episode was shit, because they literally gloss over. They literally do. They gloss over everything that happened in the last episode as if it didn't even matter. There's they try to start this tension between like the beach people versus the cave people, but then it doesn't go fucking anywhere, because at the end of it, everyone's helping people at the cave, and there's no one on the beach. So what was the purpose of the last episode? There really wasn't one. There is a few things I want to point out, and I wanted to see if you've caught on to it. So every time we've seen Sawyer, he has a book in his hand. the specific titles of the books are actually important because they are books that inspired the writers who wrote the show.
Oh, cool.
So
I've never caught on to that.
So for the last like 3 episodes, Sawyer has been reading a book called Watership Down, if you know what Watership Down is about.
No.
So it's a very strange book. Don't ever watch the movies because the movies are for some reason always marketed to kids. The book is absolutely for adults.
Okay.
It's basically about a group of people, but they're rabbits in this. So it's kind of like Animal Farm, where it's like rabbits doing things that like humans would do, but they're still rabbits, like tiny little rabbits, and they live in a human world, but they do things that are they go to war with other rabbits.
Rabbit girl.
Yeah, and
World.
I was fun fact, hate that.
Fun fact, hate that.
Yeah, no, fun fact. I was such a fan of Lost. I literally read Watership Down because of Lost, because I was like, oh, I want to read a book that like inspired the show. I definitely saw the symbolism like within Watership Down. So very strange book. But if you always notice, the specific books that he's reading always tie into kind of what's going on. During White Rabbit, he was reading Alice in Wonderland. And so like little things like that. So I did
my theory, because I did notice that he often has a book where he's writing or something like that. My theory was that he's a writer, because we don't know much about him. Is like that he's a writer. Do you
want a little something? Because next episode is a Sawyer centric episode.
Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Okay. Catch me 6 episodes ago being like, fuck Sawyer, don't want him on the screen or whatever. And now I'm like, oh, I hate him, but I want to learn so much more.
Yeah. That's the thing about this show, is that like everyone has layers. Like unless you're Shannon. Unless you're Shannon, then we just fucking hate you.
Shannon's like the most inner part of the onion that's not even good anymore. It's like that little core piece that people oftentimes just like throw in the trash.
That's Shannon. Yeah, Shannon. So this is also the start of where we're going to start seeing, I believe, more and more side characters showing up. So we saw Scott and Steve, which they had this like funny little bit where they're like, this is Scott. No, that's Steve. Like 2 seconds, like a 2-second bit. You're going to see like, I think more of that. You're going to see more of these like side characters that don't really have a lot of screen time, but they're going to try to like give them some character development a little bit, like give them a line or two, because it's like there's like 49 survivors here, so they're like, we have to like explain some of these other characters that are here, because that's what the show, that's what Lost is all about, is that you get a fuck ton of characters. Like,
but I'm also sitting here like, where's Rose? I want to go back to the woman whose husband might be alive. Like, I want to see some of these people. We haven't seen Claire, who's fully fucking pregnant. Like, where is she? Like, there's some of these, like, I don't know if Claire went to the caves or if she's on the beach. Like, these are people like I want to check in with. Not fucking Shannon. Like,
agreed. So yeah, you're going to start seeing some more of that. Other than that, like that's pretty much like the episode. This is a very like by the books episode. I will let you know next week's episode. I don't remember fully, but I don't know if it's my favorite. It's kind of go into it with low expectations, but then be surprised.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another note about Locke I wrote. Sometimes I just like what I write in the moment, so I apologize if it's so Leo of me to be like, didn't I write something funny here I need to share? But I did write, Locke is fucking amazing and should be a twisted teacher at risk of losing tenure for his unorthodox methods.
That's so accurate, though.
I know. I said Sawyer joins and Shannon, shit is failing for sure.
If we got funny notes, I'll share some of my funny notes too.
Yeah, please do. And then I wrote, okay, so there's the moment where like Charlie walks in and is like in this flashback on his brother doing drugs, and there's like all the girls there or whatever, and you know, his brother's like, I am the band. And I wrote, this is why the Dixon 5 doesn't want to get too big. It's just my family band. Oh, God. Yeah. So that's the only other thing that happened that I want to give some props to is Sun stands up to Jin in a moment where Jin says, you were indecent because she's wearing basically like a spaghetti string tank top, spaghetti strap tank top. I don't know why that was so hard for me. Anyway, and she said, it's hot. And he doesn't say shit.
Nope.
So
yeah, she like puts him in his place. Yeah, and then another, okay, so funny note.
If I were her, I just would have been like, yeah, and then would have shoved his face in my armpit and been like, fuck off.
Sniff it.
Sniff it. And then like shoved his face away. And then been like,
this is a different kind of video.
And then she's like, good boy, and then like walks away from him. Oh, it was fucking hot.
And then she's wearing like clear heels, and she puts her clear heel like on his back and like steps on him, and it gets
she's
weird.
Like, pant.
Yes, son, you better work. Put it in his place.
It just turns into a BDSM porn, and we're like, yes, son,
work, son, yes. Jack's father is there, like in the back. He's like filming it, like
he's like, this is why I didn't die for this shit. Like, I got a coffin you guys can use.
Oh my god, I hate this. So I wrote down one funny note, and it was like, Kate is wearing a bra. Okay, like what? I didn't like. I was like,
the one thing that the writers liked about last episode was like, remember when we got Kate to be done just a bra? What if that's the only thing we bring back to this episode?
I was like, she's like wearing this shirt that you can see her bra through, and it's a very tight bra, and I'm like, that's got to be uncomfortable. You're like digging.
Also, I'm sorry, 8 fucking days.
In a
that
bra?
bra's loose as fuck. Like,
yeah.
You've been sweating and running, and you also have probably lost weight. Like that bra's loose, bitch. There's no way.
Your boobies are all over the place.
I will also point this out. I know I'm not the only person who has boobs and has this experience. When I lose weight, even if I'm working my legs or like my core or whatever, my boobs are always the first thing to lose weight to. And I'm like, bitch body, can we go someplace else with this? I got arm flab we could go for. I got rolls. I've got cottage cheese legs. And you chose my boobage? No. No.
Please don't. Please don't.
So all I'm saying is if Kate is losing weight, that bra should be thinner.
Absolutely. It's like weird. It's just weird to me. Oh, another thing I want to point out is we talked about this last episode. Saeed mentions it's weird that they all survived the crash. Because he's talking about like if the tail section of the plane came off the plane, that means that we were like literally spinning, or like we had to have been like, we didn't just like safely land. He's like, it makes literally no sense that we survived this.
So when he said this, I'm happy you brought this up, because my theory was if they would have been spinning and such, even if they didn't feel like it, I think they spun into another reality. I think that this was anti-M kind of moment. They get into like a twister thing, and all of a sudden they wake up and they're in Technicolor and not in the black and white Kansas anymore. Like this is what I was getting out at that moment. And I was like,
okay, cool.
That's kind of what my thought was.
That's a good theory. It's a good theory.
And it ties into like what Rose said a few episodes ago, where she was like, maybe like I can tell like my husband's still alive, basically is what she said. And like they're thinking the same thing about us. But like I think the people who were in the tail part of the plane survived or somehow and got rescued. I think that they got rescued.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I like this theory. Okay. So MVP, LVP for Lost.
MVP, I'm going to give to Locke. Okay. Because I think without Locke's words and lessons, I don't think it would have resonated as much with Charlie. Yeah. I know it's weird that I'm not giving it to the character whose episode centric is, who grew so much and did so many wonderful things for himself. But I honestly don't think he would have done that had Locke not been there to like push him to do it. So I'm going to give it to Locke. LVP.
It's tough because a lot of the characters you don't like did some good things this episode.
Whoever fucking hit site. No, just kidding. That's such a cop out. I'm not going to do that.
I'll tell you what mine would be after, but.
Honestly, LVP, I'm going to give it to Boone, because what the fuck did he actually do? And he also like put the care of a really important task to his dead ass sister who can't do shit. Like it worked out,
Yeah.
Kind of, and not to her fault that it didn't. But bitch, like you didn't even do anything really when you got to the cave. You could have gone back and just make sure that shit got done. Like,
yeah.
So I'm gonna say it's Boone.
Okay, I would have given LVP to Hurley because of his microaggressions and like finally getting called out on it, and then like he was there helping move stones, but I mean,
he was also complaining that he had to like lift luggage and bring it there. I'm like,
yeah, Hurley, shut up. We love you.
You know what I'd be complaining about?
What?
The fact that my clothes and outfits were made for a 5-star resort and I'm sitting here in a fucking cave with a skeleton. So maybe we all have to like lower our expectations and work a little bit harder. You know, I was hoping for a mani-pedi in a spa. Guess where I'm at? Not wearing fucking shoes and get my feet all fucking dirty. Like,
yeah, and like getting sunburnt and like being a mess.
Yes. Like, I'm going to have a mole from this that's suspicious, but do you see me complaining?
Okay. So that was our review of the Nanny episode of Imaginary Friends and the Lost episode, The Moth.
Imaginary Moth, I think, is what we're going to call this episode.
Yeah, I like that. Imaginary Moth. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Just letting you know that next episode, we will be watching 2 episodes of The Nanny. So... Yes. It may be a beefier episode. We might go a little bit faster over our evaluations of them just because it's 2 of them. So make sure to watch episode 8 and 9 of The Nanny, but we are still only watching episode 8 of Lost. The reason we're doing this is because there's more episodes of The Nanny than there are Lost. And certain episodes just seem to go, like Beth has gone through and figured out what episodes go well together.
Yeah.
So,
and it's not that these 2 go well together as much as episode 8 is a Christmas episode. It's fully May. And I just feel like it doesn't have the full it's just too bad. There's an episode in season 1 that we're nowhere near. That is a Mother's Day episode that I really, that's not a spoiler or anything.
Oh,
but I was just like, it's too bad we can't do it for like a Mother's Day weekend kind of thing. It would just been so nice and apropos, like just having that kind of thing. But regardless, yes. So we're going to watch a Christmas episode, which is kind of like a sitcom in the 90s doing Christmas episode. Woo! Like really inventive.
Yeah.
But then we'll do the episode after that as well. So episodes 8 and 9 and just episode 8 for Lost. And we'll go from there.
Yeah. So just remember that just because we're covering both these shows will not be in sync going forward. Like
correct.
We
will always say which episodes we're covering and everything moving forward. So.
Yeah, because there's going to be certain episodes of Lost as well that we will be doing doubles up of. I will let you all know in advance. The only ones in season 1 we'll be doubling up on are the finale because it's a 2-part finale of season 1.
And I think for those episodes, just because Lost is a little beefier anyway to talk about, we might make those episodes only about Lost.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll have a time in the future where we discuss like 2 or 3 episodes of The Nanny and have it only be that.
Yeah.
But next week we won't do that. We'll just do 2 episodes of The Nanny and an episode of Lost.
Yep. So look forward to that. Make sure to follow us at Hot Mess Moments if you haven't already. It really helps us out. Make sure to leave a review if you enjoyed this episode.
Yes. And share if you guys think that this is a great podcast. And you know what? Listen, I'm a little biased. I think it's okay. No, I'm just kidding.
We're all right. All right. It's all right.
If you enjoy this and you think you know somebody who would enjoy it as well, or if you feel so compelled to share the link, retweet, do something like that on social media, please know that goes a long way. We've gotten quite a few people who have discovered us because people were tweeting about it, and we really appreciate that. And so that is just such a free, easy, quick way to support us, and we really, really appreciate it. Also, shout out, we did have a few different comments on our last episode. Did you take them by any chance?
Yeah, I have a few of them. So GamerCoon0525 says, now I need a podcast of just Dylan and Trixie Mattel talking about dads they find hot.
Yes, so, I would also do. We should see if Trixie would ever want to come on the show and just be ridiculous.
We should see. I'm curious her thoughts on Lost and The Nanny.
Does she watch Lost? Do you know?
I don't know if she's ever watched Lost.
I wonder if she's ever watched The Nanny.
Yeah, maybe we could do like an episode where we do just The Nanny for like a few episodes, and then we'll see if we can get Trixie to like join us.
Sounds good.
And then James Garrison says, Dylan every week. I think this is my favorite episode I've seen so far. Period. Same. Element. Jackie No says, another great show. And once I recovered from the slightly traumatizing bat stories, I really loved it.
I want you to know fully, I went upstairs that night after we finished recording that, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's a bat!" And it was just a handkerchief that I have a woman who comes and cleans, and that she just like accidentally left it like up on this like little like I have like a folding opening door to my closet, and she had left it up there. Clearly, had put it up there like while she was doing something else. And I was like, "Ah, it's a bat!" Oh no, it's a
handkerchief. Carrie Ann says, I just thought of how much the episodes of Lost was based on who was writing it. And remember that a few seasons were before the writer's strike. So yeah, I've talked about this before where later seasons of Lost do suffer from the writer's strike. And I'll specifically call out those episodes when they happen but I don't even need to call them out because you will clearly know what episodes.
I knew that last week's episode was clearly a different writer. I was like,
yeah,
what happened? So I think.
And thankfully, he does not write a lot of the episodes, so we don't have to worry about that going forward. And then Angela says Niles could be bi/pan and still continue the LGBT fantasy too, which is very true.
She's not wrong. I won't confirm or deny.
Yeah, I want to see Niles getting railed in a leather bar.
But like making catty comments while he's getting like egging on, like he's a power bottom. Yeah, but he's like also a brat. So we like, oh. I love this idea. Niles is a brat who has a dom, and so he's like getting railed, and he's just like, you call that a pounding? Like, I'm like, here for it.
I hate it still. No. Well, this has been our 7th episode of Hot Mess Moments. Seriously, it's been a joy. I cannot believe that we're already on episode 7. It's crazy.
This is insane. I love all the various different projects and content creation and stuff I have an opportunity to do, but I so look forward to this because not only do I get to cover this with like one of my best friends, but I also get to talk about like my favorite show. I love theorizing about things. I have had a massive hole in my heart after Game of Thrones ended, and this is starting to fill that. So am like, I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Well, we will see you guys next week we might double up on episodes this week. We'll see.
We'll find out. If you see a bonus episode that has 2 episodes of The Nanny and episode of Lost here, you better enjoy that Christmas gift.
Yeah, it's a little gift from us to you.
A little Christmas gift in May.
Just know that if we do upload it, it'll be soon. So be on the lookout. Make sure to follow us on follow us on Hot Mess Moments on Twitter to know any of those updates, to see if we are doubling up on episodes for a week. So that way you can watch ahead of time. That way you're not missing out. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week or this week. And until then, bye.
Bye.